Reading from Seth-Dreams and Projections of Consciousness by Jane Roberts. From Chapter 14, Dreams and Health. Jane states, "Not all dreams of ill health should be taken literally. Often they are symbolic interpretations of your state of mind. You can request another dream that will make clear to you the symbols in the first one." In session 173, Seth said, "As the personality is changed by any action, so is it changed by its own dreams. As it is molded by the exterior environment, so is it molded by the dreams that it creates and which help form its interior world. To the whole self, there is little differentiation made between exterior or interior actions. The ego makes such distinctions. The core of the personality does not. As an individual changes his physical situation through reacting to it, so he changes his interior or psychic situation in the same way. In dreams, you give freedom to actions that cannot adequately be expressed within the confines of normal waking reality. If the personality handles his dream activities capably, then problem actions find release in dreams. When the ego is too rigid, it will even attempt to censor dreams, however, and freedom of action is not entirely permitted, even in the dream condition. If this solution fails, the impeding action will then materialize as a physical illness or undesirable psychological condition. If an individual has strong feelings of dependency that cannot be expressed in daily life, he will express these in dreams. If he does not, then he may develop an illness that allows him to be dependent in physical life. If he is aware of difficulties, however, he may request dreams that will release this feeling. The individual would not necessarily remember such a dream. Psychologically, however, such an experience would be valid, and the dependency expressed. I cannot stress this too strongly. To the inner self, the dream experience is as real as any other experience. It follows that by using suggestion, various problems can be solved within the dream state. The inner ego of which we have spoken is the director of such unifying activities. It is the I, the letter I. It is the I of your dreams, having somewhat the same position within the inner self as the ego has to the outer physical body. Upon proper suggestion, the personality then will work out specific problems in the dream state. But if the solution is not clear to the conscious ego, this does not necessarily mean that the solution was not found. There will be cases where it is not only unnecessary but undesirable that the ego be familiar with the solution. The suggestions will be followed by the sleeping self in its own fashion. The solutions may not appear to the conscious self in the way it expects. The conscious self may not even recognize it has been given a solution, and yet it may act upon it. Skipping to Chapter 16, more on precognitive dreams. On telepathic, clairvoyant, or precognitive dreams, Seth says, "I have mentioned that any action has an electromagnetic reality. In telepathic and clairvoyant experiences, the electromagnetic pattern is transmitted. It must then be transformed into a pattern that can be distinguished by the ego, if the individual is to be consciously aware of the data. Often the information is picked up, translated by the subconscious, and acted upon without conscious approval or recognition. In almost all cases, however, there must be an emotional attraction, for this is what allows for the initial transmission and makes it possible. The ego chooses channels of reception with great discrimination, and again, it censors anything which it feels is a threat to its dominance. In sleep, however, many dreams are of a telepathic nature, with strong clairvoyant overtones. It is the ego's persistent discrimination in choosing the stimuli to which it will react that determines the nature of physical time as it appears to the personality. The ego, because of its function and characteristics, cannot make swift decisions as can the intuitive self. Therefore, it perceives events almost in slow motion. Right here, Rob asked, "What's the job of the intellect then?" Seth states, "In the future, the ego and intellect will expand to contain, use, and appreciate all the other portions of the self which they now mistrust. Individual identity will expand to include a greater variety of impulses and stimuli. The ego will become more of an organizer in general, letting in, literally, a barrage of experiences and forming them into meaningful patterns. Now it fears such experiences because it is not certain of its strength or of its ability to organize them. I mentioned in your last session that your scientists do not realize that man has indeed evolved since the development of the brain. For it has learned to form millions of new connections, meanings, and concepts, new gestalts that have made man something different than he was. All of these are new electromagnetic patterns which are now indelibly a part of the race. The size of the brain has little to do with this beyond a certain point. The number of electrical connections are important, however, and even the old portions of the brain are affected by them. The old portions are not the same as they were. Physical examination only discloses their condition in the present. Excerpts from session 212, labeled Subconscious Layers and Precognitive Dreams. Seth states, "You will discover definite correlations that exist between the incidence of precognitive dreams and data having to do with the temperature and weather. I do not believe it is possible for you to carry your own dream experiments far enough to discover certain other factors that exist between various layers of the subconscious and falling temperature rates in the body. Therefore, I mention it here. It would be necessary to take your temperature many times during the night and to correlate the findings with the levels of the subconscious as they showed themselves within the dream series. It should be noted, however, that with the exception of several other circumstances, these various subconscious levels fall within definite temperature ranges. To some extent, this can be ascertained through hypnosis. However, suggestion to the effect that the subject's temperature rise or fall would tend to obscure the effect. This correlation is observable only when the personality is in an inactive state. Suggestions of motion or excitement would change and affect the temperature reading so that this characteristic temperature range would go unnoticed. Illness can also obscure the effect." Jane notes, "If we can see future events in dreams, does this mean that the theory of free will is a myth? Not at all. But in order to answer this question, Seth considers it along with the nature of time and probable events." Excerpts from session 234. Seth states, "Sometimes precognitive information will appear to be wrong. In some cases, this is because a different probable event has been chosen by the self for physical materialization. I have access to the fields of probabilities, and egotistically at least, you do not. To me, your past, present, and future merge into one. On the other hand, as I have told you, your past itself continually changes. It does not appear to change to you, for you change with it. The question of precognition, however, is not at issue with information concerning the past. Your future changes as the past does. Since precognition deals with future events, it is here that the issue of changing time shows itself. In such cases, it is necessary that the correct channel of probable events be perceived. Correct, meaning the channel which will ultimately be chosen in your terms. The choice is dependent upon your choices in both past and present. These choices, however, are based upon your changing perceptions of past and present. Because I have a greater scope of perception than you, I can predict what may happen with better faculty. But this is still dependent upon my prediction of a choice you will make. Predictions per se do not contradict the theory of free will, though free will is dependent upon much more than the freedom of the ego alone. If the ego were allowed to make all the choices with no veto power from other layers of the self, you would all be in a sad position indeed. Jane notes, the term probable universe was fairly new to us then, so Rob asked, will you tell us more about the probable system and its connections here? Seth replied, the field of probabilities is quite as real as your physical universe. The experiences encountered there by other portions of the self are used by the whole self. The knowledge gained there is invaluable, not only in terms of overall experience, but as a means of training the ego and subconscious to choose between various activities. All of this data is instantly available. Only the ego is unaware of this field of reality. It would be snowed under. From this field of probabilities, you choose patterns of thought which you will weave into the physical matter of your universe. The dreaming self sees both fields and operates in each. It should be realized that the probable self also has its own dreams. This probable field seeds many other systems besides your own. It is composed of thought images, not physically materialized in your terms, but vivid storehouses of energy. Here is the material from which all pasts, presents, and futures are made. It is far from a closed system. Not only does it feed the physical universe, but in it, many aspects of your own dreams become actual. Do you dream of an apple? The apple appears in the field of probability. Excerpt 239 on Precognition and Association. Seth states, association is not clearly understood because psychologists at present believe that it works only in connection with past events. They also underestimate dream events, for many associations are the result of events that happen in the dream state, where the mind continues its associative processes. Any given personal association may originate from a dream event, as well as from a past waking one. Psychologists, generally speaking, have not yet accepted the theories of your own physicists, and they continue to consider time as a series of moments. The inverted time system recognizes the actual nature of time. There is room in it for a rather complete explanation of the mind's associative processes. The mind, as opposed to the brain, perceives in terms of a spacious present. Therefore, it draws its associations not only from your present and past, but also from your future. Take an example. Frederick Y. becomes ill whenever he smells a certain perfume. He does not know why. A psychologist might explain the reaction by presuming that some unpleasant event from the past was connected with his perception of the perfume. The explanation is a good possible one, however, it is often the only one that will be considered. Frederick may be reacting to an unpleasant event experienced in the dream state, in which the upsetting situation was accompanied by the particular odor. But he could also be reacting to a future event of the same nature. For again, the mind does not break time into a series of moments. This is done by the physical brain. The ego, as a rule, is not aware of this broader time experience, but the subconscious often is. And associative processes of the mind can and do react to the future. Therefore, it is possible for our Frederick to become ill this year at the smell of a particular perfume because, say, subconsciously, he knows that in 1980, his mother will be wearing it when she dies. The associative processes work both forward and backward. Excerpt 240 on Precognition and Clairvoyance. Seth states, I have told you that each individual creates physical matter, including objects and his own image. Coherence, illusion of permanency, placement in space, mass, and color are all arrived at and agreed upon in the ways already explained. Telepathic communication is one of the methods by which such agreement is reached. Long ago, primary and secondary constructions were explained. I emphasize that each individual perceives only his own physical constructions. Basically, there's no difference between telepathy and clairvoyance. The apparent difference is the result of an inadequate understanding of the nature of time. The important fact in both cases is that information is received that does not come through normal sense channels. When an individual clairvoyantly sees an event, this is what happens. First, he forgets the concept of continual moments that usually hampers perception. His perception changes focus so that he is aware of an event that otherwise would seem to be in the future. Unconsciously, as always, he constructs material objects in line with the available data. It goes without saying, then, that he helps to form the clairvoyantly perceived event, just as he helps construct any event in the present. The agreement as to the physical dimensions is reached in the same manner as usual. Sense data is not basically dependent upon the physical body. The mind can bypass the senses and receive data in a more direct manner, translating what it perceives automatically as it translates ordinary sense data. Under ordinary circumstances, data is received through the physical senses and then interpreted by the brain. When a clairvoyant event is perceived, the data is received by the mind, then given to the brain, which then interprets it. The physical body becomes aware of it, but the senses have actually been bypassed. The interpretation is made, however, in the same way as it usually is. Otherwise, the information would not register for the physical organism. Actually, of course, much information perceived directly by the mind does bypass the physical organism completely. In some such cases, the subconscious does receive the data. In other cases, it is not recorded in any way within the physical system, but is recorded at deeper layers of the self. Even this data is available to the subconscious, however, if the need for it arises. Before it can be used by the physical organism, it must first be taken from the deeper layers of the brain for interpretation, as if it were new sense data. In the dream state, you smell odors that are not in the physical room. The memory of these is imprinted and registered by the body as faithfully and realistically as any real odor. The experience becomes a part of buried memory and may be recovered through hypnosis. Sometimes it may spontaneously arise. Excerpt 253 on precognitive and mass dreams. Seth states, there are many kinds of mass or shared dreams. For now, we will be concerned with mass dreams that have an almost universal nature. That is, dreams that are shared at one time or another by the majority of living persons on your planet. This particular kind of dream is concerned with working out certain problems concerning physical reality. The dreams usually are not precognitive, although they may appear to be, since many of the dream events will later occur. They are not precognitive, however, because in a large measure, they bring about or cause the later events. They occur, comparatively speaking, just above the layer which Jung refers to as the collective unconscious. If you could tune into these dreams, you would have a good idea of the main events of the future, because you would see them being born. They are concerned with significant events that affect many countries. They represent deep intents, wishes, and purposes. At times, they have immense power to bring about world-shaking changes of beneficial or destructive nature. One individual is more important than you have ever dreamed, however, for the intensity and intent are important. One man passionately willing good or evil can overbalance literally 100 men. And in the dream state also, leaders can be born and make themselves known. The people already know them in mass dreams before they are recognized in physical reality.